I'm Vincent's fiancé. Those were the words I said confidently at my engagement banquet. But then, everything changed when a pregnant girl walked in. She pointed straight at me and said loudly, "I came to see the little mom that my child's father is marrying." My heart sank. Vincent froze, and within moments, he called off our engagement right there. I stood in shock, barely holding myself together. Later, the truth came out her baby wasn't even his. Vincent begged me for another chance, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. But I just smiled faintly and pulled my hand away. "I don't love you anymore," I said softly but firmly. At the engagement banquet, everything had seemed perfect until that girl arrived. Vincent had just picked up the ring to put on my finger when the door opened, and she walked in wearing a tight black dress that showed off her pregnant belly. All eyes turned to her. Vincent froze mid-motion, then hurried over to her, completely forgetting about me. He grabbed her arm and whispered something, but she shook him off and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "I came to meet the little mom marrying my baby's dad." Gasps and whispers spread through the room. My chest tightened painfully, and I clenched my fists, trying to stay composed. "Vincent, who is she? And what's she talking about?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't look at me, and in that moment, I knew. But I still asked, hoping, praying that it wasn't true. Finally, he admitted it. "She's 5 months pregnant, and we're in love." Mandy, I can't go through with this. I only care about her and our child now. The words hit like a slap. My childhood sweetheart of 13 years, the boy who used to wait for me in the rain after school, was throwing it all away without a second thought. He hugged her right in front of everyone, ignoring the shocked whispers of the crowd. I couldn't breathe, but I forced myself to stand tall even as tears threatened to spill. Then, without a hint of guilt or regret, Vincent turned to me and said, "Let go of the past. What I said back then doesn't matter anymore." With that, he walked out with her, leaving me humiliated and heartbroken in front of all our friends and family. When I got home, my mom called. "How's the engagement party going?" she asked, her voice warm and caring. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Mom, I don't want to marry him. He's in love with someone else," I cried, my composure crumbling. She didn't blame me or scold me. Instead, she told me to come home. "You don't need to go through this alone," she said gently. Vincent and I had grown up together. Our families were close, and he used to say I was his favorite person in the world. When we were kids, he'd proudly tell anyone who'd listen, "I'm going to marry Mandy when I grow up." As teenagers, he was always there for me. Rain or shine, he'd wait outside the school gate to walk me home. Once, a boy at school kept bothering me even after I rejected him. Vincent, usually calm and kind, lost his temper. He waited for me for hours, and when he found out what had happened, he punched the guy so hard he couldn't stand. Vincent got in trouble for it, but he just smiled through his bruises and said, "Protecting you is worth it." That night, as I replayed all those memories, I realized how much had changed. The boy who once said he'd love me forever was gone, and I wasn't going to waste another tear on the man he had become. I felt so lucky when he asked me to marry him, and I agreed without hesitation. He looked at me with so much love and said, "Mandy, you're the only one I'll ever love in this lifetime." I smiled and asked, "A lifetime is a long time. How can you be so sure you won't love someone else?" His answer was simple and heartfelt. "From the time we were kids until now, I've only had eyes for you. That hasn't changed, and it never will, no matter how long life is." Before I could reply, he leaned in and gave me a soft kiss. But life isn't as smooth as we wish it to be. We didn't end up at the same university, and starting college brought so many changes. Everything felt new and exciting. And despite telling people I already had a boyfriend, I kept getting confessions from others. When Vincent found out, he couldn't stand it. That summer, he begged his parents to arrange our engagement, and after both families agreed, we became officially engaged. Our families had always been close, so this made their bond even stronger. During university, my parents decided to move abroad for work. They wanted me to go with them, but I stayed for Vincent. I couldn't imagine being far from him. For a long time, our relationship was smooth, almost too perfect. There were no real challenges, no hurdles. But a year after graduation, everything started to change. Vincent became busier with work. Whenever I reached out, he was always too busy. I understood. We were adults now, and love wasn't the center of everything anymore. Love is just a side role in the adult world, he once told me. And I agreed at the time. Still, when our families began discussing a wedding date, he kept avoiding the topic. I didn't push him too hard until his birthday. That day, I decided to surprise him at his office. But the surprise wasn't on him, it was on me. I saw him there, hugging another woman. Curious and heartbroken, I followed them. I watched as they had dinner, went shopping, and eventually checked into a hotel. Later that night, around 8 p.m., Vincent called me, pretending nothing had happened. "It's my birthday," he said. "Do you have time to celebrate with me?" I didn't confront him that night. Instead, I listened as he explained why it was too early for us to get married, how he needed to focus on his career. I played along, pretending everything was fine. But deep inside, doubts grew. Would he choose me in the end? Or would he walk away? I got my answer on the day of our engagement party when his lover showed up pregnant. Vincent didn't deny her or the child. In front of everyone, he protected her, completely ignoring my presence. I became the talk of the town, a laughingstock in our social circle. Days later, an unexpected knock at my door woke me up. It was Vincent. He looked panicked, sweat dripping down his forehead. "What did you say to Cindy?" he demanded. I blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "She said you told her to leave." "Now she's gone, Mandy. She's pregnant, and she's missing." His words hit me like a brick. He actually believed I was capable of something like that. "Vincent, I didn't say anything. I swear." I reached out to grab his sleeve, desperate to explain. But he shoved me back, and I hit the wall behind me. His words were like knives. "Mandy, you used to be so kind. How did you turn into someone who plays games like this?" Tears filled my eyes as I looked at him, the boy I had loved for so long. He had once been so gentle, always worried about my feelings. Now every word he said was filled with anger and distrust. He grabbed my arm roughly, nearly making me lose my balance. "Cindy is missing because of you," he spat. "You have to come with me to find her." I struggled to pull away. "Vincent, I didn't do anything." "She's framing me. Why can't you believe me?" His grip tightened. "Stop trying to shift the blame, Mandy. You know what you've done. If something happens to her or the baby, won't it bother your conscience?" At that moment, I realized the truth about love. It's like handing someone a knife and hoping they never use it against you. Before I could respond, Vincent's phone rang. It was Cindy. I could hear her crying, her voice shaky and full of fear. "Vincent, please save me." She sobbed. In the background, I heard a man yelling angrily. Vincent was panicking, but he still insisted on dragging me along to meet Cindy. The address she provided led us to a shady-looking clubhouse. When we arrived, Cindy came running out the door and threw herself into Vincent's arms. Her appearance was shocking. Her hair was disheveled. She was wearing nothing but a bathrobe, and bruises marred her neck and arms. Faint marks on her skin suggested she had been roughly handled. "Vincent, I don't want to live anymore," Cindy sobbed. clutching his arm desperately. "Tell me, Cindy, who did this to you?" Vincent's voice was full of anger and concern. "It's okay," Cindy replied, her voice trembling. "He didn't succeed. I'm fine." I stood frozen in disbelief as Cindy spun her story. Before anyone could say more, a middle-aged man in a bathrobe stormed out of the clubhouse, his face flushed with rage. "You conniving little witch. You ran off after taking my money, but I've got you now. You'll pay for this," he shouted, reaching out to grab Cindy. Before the man could touch her, Vincent lunged. In an instant, he had thrown the man to the ground. What followed was a brutal scene. Vincent rained down punches and kicks with unrelenting force. The man's groans of pain filled the air, and the sickening sound of bones breaking echoed. I couldn't watch anymore. The sheer violence made me turn away. By the time Vincent finally stopped, the man was unconscious. Without hesitation, Vincent had him sent to the hospital. Cindy, after being examined by doctors, was found to have only minor external injuries. But Vincent's fury remained undiminished. He cornered me in the hospital room, his face a mask of cold fury. "This is your fault," he spat. "Apologize to Cindy right now." His accusation hit me like a slap. "I didn't do anything," I insisted, desperate for him to believe me. "Why won't you trust me?" But Vincent wouldn't listen. His grip on my wrists tightened painfully, twisting my arms behind my back. I gasped in pain, tears spilling down my cheeks. I said, "Apologize." He growled. "I will never apologize for something I didn't do," I said, my voice trembling but defiant. "If you think I'm guilty, then do it, just kill me." My words seemed to momentarily stun him, but the anger in his eyes only darkened. Before he could respond, his parents entered the room. Vincent immediately let go of me, stepping back. I didn't care to hear what came next. All I could see in my mind was Vincent's disdainful expression and Cindy's triumphant smirk. It was clear now this wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. Before leaving, I turned to Vincent one last time. "Maybe your girlfriend downstairs can help you figure this out?" Without waiting for his reaction, I walked away. When I got home, I called Ryan. Ryan's family was heavily involved in the entertainment industry, and he had a knack for uncovering people's secrets. Well, Ryan said when he picked up. "Finally realized what a scumbag Vincent is, huh? Regretting not choosing me now?" "Ryan," I cut him off. "I need your help." "Anything for you," he said smoothly. "Name it." I ignored his teasing tone and sent him Cindy's information. Ryan could be annoying with his non-stop chatter, but he was resourceful. Years ago, he had pursued me relentlessly. He even tried to knit me a scarf once, though the result was a disaster. Eventually, he bought me a luxurious scarf instead, saying, "One's for sentiment, the other's for style." But I hadn't accepted either gift. Back then, my heart was only for Vincent. Ryan had once waited all night outside my house, hoping I'd give him a chance. Frustrated, he'd yelled, "Why don't you just compare us and choose who's better?" At the time, I dismissed his words. But now, I couldn't help but remember them. In the end, the order of appearance doesn't matter. Vincent proved that by falling for someone else. Ryan never mentioned his feelings again after that incident, saying he was fine with just being my friend. His light-hearted personality made it easy to be around him, and right now, I needed his help. Vincent's family had a solid foundation, making them nearly untouchable. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted him to feel the weight of his betrayal. I reached out to the partners we worked with privately. Most of Vincent's recent projects had been secured through my parents' connections, and it was time to sever those ties. All the deals were profitable, so I increased the benefits for everyone and made sure they canceled their contracts with Vincent. I even promised to cover any breach of contract fees. Most of the bosses were easy to convince and quickly agreed. For the ones who hesitated, a little extra profit changed their minds. The toughest one to win over was Mr. Lee. He's someone who cares deeply about integrity and doing what's right. He told me, "I understand you want revenge on Vincent for personal reasons, and your offer is very tempting. But I can't go against my principles just to benefit myself." I admired his honesty, but didn't give up. "If you truly value morals, then you should work with me," I told him. He looked at me curiously. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath and said, "Yes, I want revenge for personal reasons. But think about this. Last year, when Vincent's business was in trouble, my family stepped in to save him. And how did he repay me? After using me, he fell for another woman, had a child with her, and humiliated me in front of everyone at his engagement party. Tell me, Mr. Lee, can someone like that be trusted?" He didn't say much after that, only that he needed a few days to think. I decided not to push further and left it at that. A few days later, I heard whispers from inside Vincent's company. His projects were falling apart, partners were backing out, cash flow was drying up, and the entire business was grinding to a halt. It was clear Vincent was in a mess, and he didn't even have time to focus on Cindy anymore. But then, out of nowhere, a post about me went viral online. It claimed I was using my family's power to bully Cindy and force Vincent to marry me. The post spread like wildfire, with bloggers and influencers twisting the story into something ugly. They painted me as a spoiled rich girl, while Cindy became the helpless victim everyone pitied. The comments were ruthless. Poor Cindy. She and Vincent are true love, and now she's pregnant, but Mandy is ruining everything. Rich people always get their way. Vincent may marry Mandy, but he'll never love her. I couldn't help but laugh at how absurd it all was. Did they really think I'd go through all this trouble just to marry a man like Vincent? All I wanted was to make him pay for betraying me. And as for Cindy, I had never bullied her. Curious about who started this smear campaign, I had someone trace the post's IP address. No surprise it came from Cindy's home. So, she wanted to play dirty? Fine. Two can play that game. That's when Ryan called. He didn't waste any time. I looked into Cindy like you asked. "You're not going to believe this." He went on to explain that Cindy had been with multiple wealthy men, always walking away with a hefty payout when the relationships ended. And the kicker? The child she was claiming was Vincent's, wasn't even his. She had faked the pregnancy test timing, and when she actually got pregnant, Vincent wasn't even in the picture. I sipped my coffee calmly as he finished. Well, there are always men who fall for these games, and those who do are rarely good men. Ryan chuckled. "So, what's the plan? Do you want me to handle this for you?" I shook my head. No need. Since Cindy wants the truth to come out, let's help her make it go viral. I reached out to several popular bloggers to keep the conversation alive and make sure the story gained traction. Once the public's curiosity was at its peak, I would release the evidence Ryan had found: photos, transaction records, and proof of her fake pregnancy. If Cindy wanted drama, she was about to get it, but not in the way she hoped. As soon as the news went public, it caused a massive backlash online. People were furious, and the fallout was immediate. Vincent's company stocks took a nosedive. The next day, Mr. Lee called me. "I've decided to work with you and cancel the contract with Vincent," he said. With that, Vincent was officially cornered. It felt like a partial victory, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. Shortly after, Ryan messaged me, "Is Mandy free? Let me take you out for dinner to celebrate your revenge." I thought about it for a moment before replying. "How about I treat you instead? You've helped me a lot with all the information." "Great," he responded almost instantly. The one thing Ryan and I had in common was our shared love for Chinese food. I picked a restaurant and sent him the location. When Ryan arrived, he brought a bouquet of flowers and showered me with congratulations for handling everything so well. During dinner, he kept looking like he wanted to say something, but I didn't press him. As we were getting ready to leave, he finally spoke up. "So, isn't it my turn now?" he said, his eyes sparkling as he looked at me. I froze, unsure of how to respond. My mind wandered. The excitement of new love always fades. Promises that feel unbreakable eventually get broken. If love is just a cycle of betrayal and heartbreak, what's the point of starting over? Before I could say a word, Ryan suddenly stood and hugged me tightly. I was startled until I noticed Cindy standing nearby, a bowl of steaming soup in her hand. Without warning, she threw it right at me. Ryan moved quickly, blocking the soup with his back. It splashed all over his white t-shirt, soaking through and burning him. If he hadn't stepped in, that scalding soup would have hit my face. There was no time to argue with Cindy. I rushed Ryan to the hospital. Thankfully, the burns weren't severe, but the doctor insisted he stay for 2 days to make sure the wounds didn't worsen. After settling the hospital paperwork, I returned to the ward and found Vincent waiting there. "What Cindy did was out of line," Vincent said, looking exhausted. His face was pale, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "I'll make sure she apologizes to you." I scoffed. An apology from Cindy? No thanks. I'd rather not risk shortening my lifespan. Ryan, despite being in pain, couldn't resist chiming in. "Vincent, don't act so righteous now. You weren't exactly innocent." Vincent sighed. "Mandy, I broke up with her a while ago. The child isn't even mine. I was wrong to doubt you. She played me, and I let it happen." Ryan cut him off before he could finish. "Don't make excuses. If someone falls for a mistress, it's because they lack loyalty and love in the first place." Vincent fell silent, clearly embarrassed. Finally, he looked at me. "Mandy, can we talk in private? There are things I need to say." Ryan bristled. "Why? So you can manipulate her again? You think Mandy's that easy to fool?" I raised my hand to stop him. "It's fine. Let's go, Vincent. We need to settle this." We walked to the cafe next to the hospital. It was quiet and dimly lit, perfect for a serious conversation. We sat across from each other, and Vincent stayed silent for so long I had to break the ice. "Just say what you need to say," I urged. He sighed heavily. "When Cindy first came into my life, I didn't want anything to do with her. I was so sure I'd never betray you. I thought we'd get married someday, but she was so kind, so innocent, or so I thought. Over time, I found myself drawn to her, and I wavered. I was conflicted. Part of me felt something for her, but I couldn't bear the thought of losing you." I shook my head. "I didn't come here to listen to your love story, Vincent." "No, let me finish," he said quickly. "I see it clearly now. What I felt for Cindy wasn't love. It was just pity mixed with the thrill of something new. I was like a man possessed back then, but now I know I never stopped loving you." Vincent's words made me feel sick. His eyes were red as he said, "My love is for you. Freshness and love are not the same. Freshness fades, but love lasts a lifetime. I made mistakes, but my heart belongs only to you." I stared at him, disgusted. It felt like he was saying, "I love you, but I'll have affairs and children with other women. You'll forgive me because my love for you is eternal." I couldn't hold back anymore. I grabbed the coffee on the table and threw it at him. "Why should I endure your indecision?" I said, my voice trembling with anger. "You used my love, abandoned me, betrayed me, and now you think I'll forgive you just because you say you love me? Do you even love me? Or do you just love what I can do for you?" You think I'll support you after every affair, raise your children, and accept your empty promises? You're wrong. I don't love you anymore. I stood up and walked away without looking back. Time changes people, and so do betrayal and heartbreak. Even childhood sweethearts can't survive human nature. That night, I went home and collapsed into a deep sleep. My dreams took me back to our happiest days. I saw us in college, watching the sunset together during the holidays. The sky was a beautiful golden hue, and Vincent held me close. I told him, I wish time could freeze, and we could stay like this forever. He smiled, his voice soft. We don't need time to stop. We'll get married after graduation, and I'll spend every day with you, watching sunsets just like this. My heart was so full of happiness then. I dreamed of us climbing a mountain together at night, watching the sunrise. In the early morning light, he kissed me and said, "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I want to marry you right now." The dream felt so real, so warm, but it didn't last. A knock at the door woke me up, and I realized it was already noon. When I opened the door, there was Vincent standing with groceries in his hands. "Why are you here?" I asked coldly. "You've always had a weak stomach," he said. "You used to love the porridge I made for you. I know you're still angry, but I'm ready to start over. Let me take care of you." His face was full of sincerity, but I wasn't moved. "You made it clear yesterday that we're over," I said firmly. "You should leave." But he didn't budge, just stood there, staring at me. I tried to close the door, but he stopped me. Just then, Ryan appeared. "Mandy," he said, holding a container of porridge. "I brought this for you. It'll help your stomach feel better." He glanced at Vincent before adding, "This time, I'll compete with him fairly, right?" I shook my head. "No. He doesn't even deserve to compete." Ryan gave Vincent a pointed look, and Vincent stepped back, realizing he had no right to force his way in. I let Ryan inside and shut the door behind us. Once inside, Ryan looked at me and said, "Why do you still let him bother you? I backed off when you chose him, but he ended up betraying you. This time, I'm not walking away." Ryan's persistence and kindness had started to warm my heart, but I knew I couldn't stay here. I couldn't let myself get drawn into another relationship, especially when my own heart wasn't ready. "I appreciate everything you've done for me," I said softly, "but I don't want to delay you. You deserve better than someone who's still putting the pieces of their life back together." Ryan nodded, understanding. For now, I needed time to figure out my own path, free from the ghosts of the past. I've got no feelings for this city anymore, so I'm planning to go back to my parents. The day I decided to leave, Vincent showed up again. As I was packing and sorting through my things, the door was wide open. He walked right in, grabbed a box from my hand, and offered to help. "No need," I said, but before I could finish, the box fell, and everything inside spilled all over the floor. Vincent knelt down and stared at the stuff for a long time. Finally, he looked up at me with a sparkle in his eyes. "You still love me, don't you?" I shook my head. "I stopped loving you a long time ago," I said, but he didn't believe me. "You're lying," he insisted. "Why do you still keep the tickets from when we went out together? The gifts I gave you? The notes we wrote in school? If you don't love me, why are these still here?" His voice was getting more intense. He grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. I bent down, picked everything up from the floor, put it back in the box, and threw it in the trash in front of him. "I miss who I used to be, not you," I told him. Vincent stood there, frozen, not saying a word for what felt like forever. After I finished packing and was ready to leave, he spoke again. "I'll take you. Let me be your friend." He was insistent. Since I knew this was probably the last time we'd see each other, I didn't argue. He drove me to the airport and we didn't say anything the whole way. When we got to the airport, I didn't linger. I unbuckled my seatbelt, got out of the car quickly, and didn't look back. "Will you ever come back?" he asked. "Probably not," I replied. "And us?" he asked. I sighed. "I hope we never meet again." I walked away, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. It had been a long time since I'd spent real time with my parents. Back then, I was always thinking about Vincent, not wanting to leave him for my parents, who were busy with work. Now I realized how wrong that was, putting a man before my family. Later, I heard from Ryan that Cindy's child was gone. The child's father was married, and when his wife found out about the affair, the child disappeared. It made me realize that people have to face the consequences of their actions eventually. One evening, my mom and I took a walk in the park. We watched as the lights in the buildings turned on one by one. If I never find someone who truly loves me, I wondered out loud, will I never have a home? Mom squeezed my hand and jokingly said, "Nonsense. Wherever your parents are, that's home. If you can't find love, just be a good daughter to us." In that moment, I finally understood. My parents were the ones who truly loved me, no matter what. A week later, Ryan came to pick me up. I had just landed and couldn't find him, so I learned he had tracked my location and tried to find me. When I arrived at the airport, I saw him, all bundled up in his coat, his face red from the cold, puffing out clouds of breath. He looked at me and said, "You have no idea how cold it is here, do you?" Once we got in the car, it took a while for him to warm up. "You have no conscience. I dressed up to see you," he teased. I dropped him off at the hotel, handed him the key card, and said, "I'm heading back. You should rest." But suddenly, he grabbed my arm. "I've started shifting my business here," he said seriously. "Since your parents are here, and you don't want to leave them, I'll come here too. Wherever you are, that's where I want to be." My heart skipped a beat. "What if I never agree to be with you?" I asked. He looked me in the eye. "Then I'll wait a lifetime." Ryan promised he would be my friend for life, never crossing any lines. But my heart was a mess. I couldn't look at him anymore, so I turned quickly and rushed into the elevator, pressing the button to close the doors hard, afraid he might follow me. As the elevator dropped quickly to the ground floor, I gulped in the cold air, trying to calm myself. I stood outside the hotel for a long time, thinking. I remembered when my parents moved abroad, and I wasn't sure if I should go with them. At that time, Vincent had said, "Don't you love me?" I said I did, and he asked me to stay, telling me that this city would be my home from now on. But now, Ryan was telling me that I could go anywhere I wanted, and he would be there, making everything work just to be by my side. It suddenly all clicked, and I knew what I had to do. I rushed back into the hotel, ignoring the front desk worker's confused stare, and made my way to Ryan's floor. I rang the doorbell, and when it opened, he stood there waiting. "Let's give it a try," I said. "But if you betray me, I'll never forgive you." Ryan held me tight, and I realized he had been in the room for a while, still wearing his coat and shoes. "Why did you open the door so fast?" I asked, surprised. He smiled softly. "I was waiting for you to knock." I couldn't help but wonder why I was willing to give it another shot. Maybe it was because Ryan was so sincere, or maybe because Vincent had been sincere too. After all, Ryan had pursued me for so long, never giving up, and Vincent had loved me for over a decade. In the end, I realized that I couldn't let one betrayal or one failed relationship make me give up on love. Looking back, I felt confident that giving Ryan a chance was the right choice. After all, the order in which people come into your life doesn't matter. Everyone meets a few bad ones along the way. So never give up on love, and always believe that you deserve it.